On today's Gangster Profile, the Second Boston Irish Gang War, the War in Southie. For the most part, South Boston stayed out of the 1960s Irish gang war in Boston between Winter Hill and Charlestown. Southie was its own world, insular even for Boston. Southie rackets were small and local. The Italian Mafia had absolutely nothing to do with the Southie underworld. The Killeen brothers of South Boston ran the Southie rackets out of their bar, the Transit Cafe on West Broadway. They were four brothers, George, Edward, Kenneth, and the leader of the gang, Donald Killeen. They were for the most part bookmakers, taking bets on sports games, but the big money makers were the horse and dog races. Boston used to have Suffolk Downs for horse races and Wonderland and Revere to house greyhound dog races. These places were very popular. I remember my uncle and father going to Wonderland a lot for the races when I was a kid. But betting on these races were even more popular. This was the Killeens' big money maker. They were also in the loan sharking business, which is loaning people on the street money for extremely high interest rates. Everything was going smooth for the Killeens. They were able to operate peacefully and make decent money, and unchallenged. But then in the late 1960s, a new younger gang started making noise in Southie. The Mullins were a gang of teens and guys in their 20s that were all friends and hung around at Joseph Mullins Square at the intersections of O and East 2nd Street that was named after a Southie war hero. This is where the name of the gang originated. They were the young kind of street punks compared to the older, more established Killeens. The Mullins' main hustles were pilfering the South Boston waterfront. Anything that could be stolen or resold was taken. The Mullins member Patrick Nee, an Irish-born immigrant to South Boston, said they mostly looked for everyday items that could be easily resold to the residents of South Boston. They said they stole tons of seafood from the South Boston waterfront. The Mullins also were heavily involved in truck hijacking, basically for the same reason as pilfering the waterfront. They were trying to steal the contents of the truck to resell the items. The Mullins may have also been involved in small-scale bookmaking and loan sharking. For the most part, they let the Killeens handle the more established rackets. Besides Nee, some of the prominent members of this young, tough gang were legendary street fighter Tommy King, Mickey Dwyer, Francis Buddy Leonard, Dennis Buddy Roach, and the gang's leader, Paulie McGonigal. There was a balance between the two gangs until a fateful night in 1971 when members of the two gangs got into a barroom brawl that escalated into the Second Irish Gang War of Boston. This smaller, less talked about than the first gang war. The second only involved these Irish South Boston gangs and didn't have a bigger impact on the Boston underworld like the first one did. One fateful night while drinking at the Transit Cafe, the Killeens' headquarters, one of the younger tough Killeen brothers, Kenneth, got into an argument with Mullins' tough Mickey Dwyer. I'm not exactly sure what the argument was about, or if they both just had too much to drink or if something actually happened, but the argument turned into a physical altercation. Killeen ended up getting the better of Dwyer and ended up biting a piece of his nose off and spitting it out. The bartender dutifully picked it up off the floor and put it on ice to try to preserve it. As soon as the word spread through the Southie barrooms, the rest of the Mullins rushed to the scene to see what happened. By chance, Mullin member Patrick Nee and Killeen enforcer James Whitey Bulger happened to be talking with each other at another bar when someone ran in and announced that Kenny Killeen bit off Mickey Dwyer's nose and shot him in the arm at the Transit Cafe. Bulger offered Nee a ride there. When they arrived, the Mullins were already gathering. Whitey dropped off Nee and the two gave each other a head nod, acknowledging that this was probably the last time they were going to be seeing each other on friendly terms. The Mullins were pissed and they wanted Kenny Killeen. Donald Killeen couldn't let this go unchecked. The Mullins showed up at the Transit, their headquarters, in force, demanding retribution. If the Killeens didn't step up, nobody in Southie would fear or respect them anymore, and they would be finished. Before the hostilities turned into open warfare, the Killeens and the Mullins sat down to discuss the situation. Unfortunately, this meeting had the opposite effect than what was intended. At an unnamed bar on Broadway, South Boston's thoroughfare, the two gangs met. What originally was supposed to be a peaceful meeting ended up turning violent. A disagreement began, and Mullin member Dennis Buddy Roach ended up getting loud. When he stood up from his chair, Killeen enforcer Billy O'Sullivan thought he was going to do something, so he pulled out his revolver and shot Roach in the shoulder. The meeting was over. What at first didn't seem like that bad of a gunshot soon turned tragic. Upon difficulties at surgery, Roach was left paralyzed from the waist down. He would remain wheelchair-bound for the rest of his days. There was no hope for peace now. The Southie Gang War had officially begun. The Killeens' two top enforcers were the vicious hood Billy O'Sullivan and the fresh out of Alcatraz James Whitey Bulger. Bulger missed the original Irish gang wars, spending the majority of the 60s inside different federal prisons for a string of bank robberies. He did a couple years of his bit in the infamous Alcatraz. Upon his release back to South Boston streets, he talked incessantly about it to anyone that would listen. Bulger was a nobody in the Boston underworld, and he didn't have a reputation as a killer yet. That came later in life. One day as they drove alongside a man Whitey thought was Mullin gang leader Paulie McGonigal, Bulger yelled his name. The man turned and was simultaneously shot. They had made a mistake. It was a McGonigal, but the wrong one. It was Paulie's younger brother Donald, a popular, well-liked young man that had absolutely nothing to do with criminality or the underworld. Bulger panicked at the fact they had gotten the wrong guy. Billy O'Sullivan told him not to worry, it was no big deal. He said he smoked with bad lungs and he would have died of cancer anyways. Bulger was right to panic. The news of his brother's death, while at first crushing Paulie McGonigal, lit a fire inside him and the other members of the Mullins gang, and they were now bent on revenge. Billy O'Sullivan was spotted at Muck Kelly's Cork and Bull Tavern in Southie by Buddy Roach's sister Gaga. She called members of the Mullins and told them that O'Sullivan was at the bar and that he was shit-faced. She called them cowards and told them they needed to do something. So far, Billy O'Sullivan had killed Donald McGonigal, Paulie's younger non-gang affiliated brother, and had shot Gaga's brother, Buddy Roach, putting him in a wheelchair for life. Whether the Mullin gang members trailed him home from the bar or just waited at his home in the Savin Hill neighborhood of Dorchester, a group of men greeted him as he walked up to his front door. As soon as O'Sullivan saw them, a bolt of adrenaline shot through his body and snapped him out of his drunken state. He quickly turned and ran out into the street with the group, estimated between 3 to 6 men, gave chase. As O'Sullivan ran across the street, he tripped on a manhole cover and fell to the ground. The group caught up with him, and the trigger man, most likely Paulie McGonigal, shot O'Sullivan twice in the head, killing him. The Killeens' most dangerous and feared enforcer was dead, and the Mullins were gaining momentum. In the aftermath of Billy O being murdered in front of his Dorchester home, Whitey hit the mattresses. Big bad Whitey was scared shitless of the younger Mullins, and without his dangerous counterpart O'Sullivan, Bulger laid low. It was rumored that he hid in faraway Cape Cod until things quieted down. In the meantime, without any real muscle to back him, Donald Killeen, the gang's leader, still would not concede. So the Mullins pushed the issue. On May 13, 1972, on Killeen's son Gregory's 4th birthday, Donald Killeen stepped outside his Framingham, Mass. home. He said he was going to retrieve the newspaper, but he was really going to get his son's birthday present that he left in the car for him. As he opened the door to his 71 Chevy Nova, another car pulled alongside him, and an assailant armed with a machine gun shot Killeen 15 times in the face, killing him instantly. It was rumored that Whitey Bulger killed his own boss to try to appease the Mullins and bring an end to the hostilities, but Pat Nee claims that Mullin member Jimmy Mantville was responsible for the murder. Either way, Donald Killeen was very, very dead. A few days later, Donald's brother, Kenneth Killeen, was standing on a back deck of his waterfront apartment in Southie when a bullet hit the metal railing in front of him. A piece of shrapnel came off grazing Killeen as he hit the deck. Members of the Mullins were on a boat with a sniper rifle trying to take out Killeen. As if he needed any more dissuading, later when Whitey had made peace with the Mullins, Whitey and Steve Flemmy pulled up along Killeen as he was jogging in Southie and said, "You're done! No more warnings!" And so he was. The old-time Killeens who ran the small Southie rackets for decades without much interruption were done. The younger Mullins were the clear victors of the Southie gang war. The one mistake they made, though, was letting Whitey Bulger live and making peace with him. After the Killeens were soundly defeated, Bulger reached out for peace, and after a sit-down at Chandler's, the notorious Wise Guy hangout in the South End, it was decided that Whitey would be able to operate in Southie in conjunction with the Mullins. Like I said, they should have killed Whitey while they had the chance. They probably weren't aware at the time of what a treacherous human being he was. The Mullin guys were happy just living their lifestyle and getting by, but not Whitey. He wanted everything and more. Within a year of the gang war ceasing, Mullin leader Paulie McGonigal went missing. He never let go of his brother being murdered, and Whitey couldn't take the chance of him getting revenge. His body was discovered in 2003 on Tinian Beach, along with the other bodies disposed of Bulger that began popping up in the early 2000s. The tough Tommy King wouldn't let go of his friend Paulie gone missing. Bulger filled King's head with all types of misinformation. King also was doomed when he publicly humiliated Bulger in a barroom brawl. Plus, if he ever found the truth about Paulie McGonigal, he would come for Bulger. So Whitey had John Motorano put a slug in the back of Tommy King's skull. Luckily for Pat and Eve, by the mid-1970s, he was more interested in aiding the IRA with arms against the UK instead of focusing on the Southie rackets. Luckily for him, Whitey didn't see him as a threat, and he left him alone. Within a few years of Donald Killeen's demise, Whitey Bulger managed to weasel his way into the door and was now securely on top of the South Boston rackets. The old Killeen's headquarters, the Transit Cafe, was renamed Triple O's and was now Whitey's base of operations. With the Killeen gang and the Mullins gang basically no longer in existence, Whitey's new gang of Steve Flemmy, Kevin Weeks, and leftovers of the Winter Hill gang like John Motorano ran Southie unchecked. By being locked up in Alcatraz, Whitey missed the first Boston gang war. He survived the Southie gang war, and by managing to not get killed, he put himself in a position to take over the rackets. He used the trusting nature of the surviving Mullins members against them and slithered his way to the top of Southie. Although not as grand in scale, the Second Irish Gang War in Boston had long-lasting implications on the Boston underworld. If you liked this video, hit that old like button, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so now. Thank you to my old and new subscribers. We finally made it past 700. We were stuck in the 600s for a while, so I am very grateful. Let's keep going to 1,000. Leave a comment, make a request, but of course, guys, have a great day, and take care of yourselves.